forward to this podcast. I met this lady quite a few events ago, and she's always been very kind to me. And we've always had really good chats, and I've always got on a deeper level quite quickly. So I'm actually looking forward to this podcast. I haven't got a clue where I'm going to go with it. So it could be a 4-hour long podcast. This. So, but would you please do the honour of introducing yourself? Just tell us a little bit about what you've done in your life and what you do for a job.
Sure. Thanks, Ryan, and thank you for having me on the podcast. So my name is Vicki Mitman, and we know each other through the franchise space. I'm a franchise lawyer with NMW, and I suppose my whole background's been in franchising. I started it when I was 9 through my parents who were franchisors.
Well, so every time, I've never had the conversation with you. I don't think, as far as I'm aware, I've never had that conversation. In fact, I know I haven't had that conversation with you about. I've heard about your mum and dad. You've talked to me about them, about personal stuff. Yeah. But every time I've said to anyone, Vicki Mitman's come on the podcast, like, oh my God, tell me about mum and dad. Get to tell the story, how she came into franchising. So I don't know if you want to go straight in for the kill.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, so I knew about franchising well before most of my friends knew about it, and most of my friends still don't know about it. Yeah. But I knew about it because my parents were always in business, and they were looking at their next business opportunity, and my dad got in touch with what was then the Dwyer Group, is now Neighbourly, and he met Don Dwyer Sr., who was the original founder of it all, I believe, and he met with Don Dwyer about the different concepts they had in the US. It was mainly then a group of service brands, as it is now. It's much bigger now. And my dad was talking to him about the differentiators and what made them special. And a lot of it was about the customer service and delivery. So, the plumber being someone who turns up in a smart uniform, in a clean van, gives you an estimate for the job before they carry on working. And it's not a surprise. The service is the key thing. And then the service that they get is sort of the secondary part. At a high level. So my dad liked this idea, and he brought Drain Doctor to the UK. It's called Mr. Router in the States. He brought it over to the UK in, I believe, 1993.
Right. As a franchisor?
Yeah, well, as a master franchisee.
Oh.
So, and then they set up an operation to test it in the UK, and then they rolled it out as a UK franchisor.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I had no idea that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you were 9 when this happened?
Yeah, I was very young. And because I'm close to my parents, and we were the sort of family, we would always sit together at dinner, and they'd ask me about school, and I'd ask them about work. So I was always fascinated and interested. And I would go along to their office regularly, and I used to work there in school holidays, and I'd go to the company conventions, and I'd listen to the franchisees and the franchisor talking to each other and working together to make this really cool thing happen. So it felt very natural to me. It felt like being at home. Yeah. And when I was at law school, which is quite a few years on, we were doing business law, and we were looking a little bit about licensing overall as one of the models for expansion. And I remember saying, what about franchising? Because that is one of the options. And they were like, oh, we don't really know much about that. So in the end, my mum and another one of our senior leadership team at the time came and did a talk at my law school about what franchising is. So it's kind of cool that helped hopefully more people understand it, because we sort of vaguely got told about agency, licensing, distributorship, and franchising was this sort of little end note, but it helped get a little bit more information out there. So then when I did my legal training, I went to a firm that had a franchise specialism and really never looked back. What
an amazing way to come into it. I think I can relate to it. Now, I have no idea what age it will be. I dragged more up here. I could probably pinpoint the date, but let's say about 1996. So I would have been in 4th year or 3rd year at school, secondary school, and that's when I went into like mum's. But I was the same, I remember going around the mum's, businesses and being in there on the summer holidays and earning a bit of petty cash and earning a bit of pocket money, for working in the businesses and learning about it there. It's a nice place to have been, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I
loved it. It's a very fortunate place to be in.
Exactly, and I think that's something that most people. I was lucky that I had parents that included me in that journey.
Yeah.
And I was also lucky, I suppose. I was there working in head office, just helping with reception or mailing things out or doing accounts filing, whatever it might have been. And I was seeing some of the franchisee training go ahead. And my mum was always really keen on trying to fit the training to the franchisee. So whilst the same information had to be disseminated, it could be shared in different ways depending on how people learned. And she was really interested in personality profiling to try and help people learn the most effectively. because some people learn theoretically, some learn by doing, some are more visual, some like to discuss things. So I was there doing like drain relining training in my teenage years. Not every girl says that.
I love that, innit?
Yeah. So I actually passed the training as well. I think it was some time ago now. I've never had to use that skill. I'd strongly recommend asking Drain Doc to come and help.
Isn't it interesting? Because I think some parents would say that's not good, that you had to bring your kids into work and you should be doing things like whatever, theme parks and things like, I don't know what else you would do at the summer holidays with kids. I mean, I do things with my kids, but sometimes I have to bring them into work as well. And I always wonder, because I just don't know what other parents do with their children when they don't take them into work.
Well, I feel like I'm very close to my parents, but their work has always been a huge part of them. So I liked being with them on the journey.
Yeah.
And I got to travel. We went over to the US for American conventions, and I thought it was great fun. Yeah. But I also, I never feel like they weren't there for me. I've always been able to go to them and talk to them. They've been a huge presence, still are a huge presence in my life. Yeah. And some of my very best friends. So I don't think having both a strong working mum and dad, who were often prioritising work, it didn't hurt me at all. In fact, if anything, it probably helped me. Yeah,
it's a funny one, isn't it? I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, and I don't want it to come across the wrong way, but sometimes there's some businesses out there that give you that free time to spend time with your kids, and I don't understand that concept sometimes. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. Because it messes with my brain a little bit, because I'm like, I understand that you have to spend time with your children. I do spend time with my kids. I'm not saying I don't, because I do it the weekends and the evenings. Like I did something last night. Luckily got a drone off a friend of mine, and we played with the drone for hours in the kitchen and taught them how to fly it. And we ended up smashing it into the lighting and stuff, and into the brick walls and all sorts in the kitchen. But then I was also working all day yesterday, and then in half term last week they went to Unite and basically played taekwondo for a week, but I was working. But it doesn't mean that I don't love my kids and don't spend time with them. But then it's like this thing where this conception is of having a business that needs part-time so that you can spend more time with your kids, and it messes in my head, because should I feel guilty or should I feel bad for not wanting to spend more time with my children? And it's just a concept I always struggle with sometimes. I never really get my head around it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the same for everyone. I think people do their own thing. But for me, I always felt with my parents growing up that I was part of their whole, and I was a big part of that. But there was also the business that was really important to them. And Dad said that, we have responsibility to our staff, to our franchisees, and that's an important part of his life. So if we were on holiday and he was in the swimming pool and they got a phone call, Dad would get out of the pool and take the call. It didn't mean that I didn't have my dad in the pool with me on holiday, and he taught me to swim. And it's one of my favourite things to do still, is swim, because he taught me to do that at such a young age. So he was very present, but he could also be contactable as the chairman of our company if needed. And I think that's important. And if you are sort of doing something that you love authentically, then actually you can have all of it. Yeah. And it might take some balance, and it doesn't mean that nothing ever gets dropped or forgotten about, but generally I think it's quite positive. And that's how I run my life now, in terms of my personal relationships and my time with my family, my time in my legal business, my time with my coaching business, actually, and all my hobbies and interests. I like a full life, and if you do, there's no reason you can't have that. As long as you figure out what works for you.
I think that's again, though, there's people who've been on this podcast who disagree with that, but that's how I see mine and like mine. But it doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. It works for me. The only time it's ever conflicted with it is when I've had a big state of emergency in work and I've been on holiday and had to deal with it. Yeah. And it's consumed a couple of days, but I think to myself, I would have had to deal with that anyway. Yeah. It wasn't a case of I was answering emails or dealing with something I shouldn't. Someone else could have dealt with it. No one else could have dealt with it.
No. And if you're that person that can deal with it and has to deal with it, then there's the option.
There wasn't no other option. Yeah. So it's something that I always plagues me, but also I kind of just have to make peace with.
Yeah, and maybe just what you're doing fits you, and maybe what you're doing will change.
Yeah.
If the kids are a bit older, you might have different time away. But I don't think there's a hard and fast rule about what it has to be.
Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting, isn't it? Right, okay. So I'm gonna dig a little bit. So let's talk a little bit. Like, so you 9 years old, been in what was it, what's it called?
Drain Doctor.
Drain Doctors, because it's the same group, isn't it?
Yeah, it is now.
Yeah, it's Drain Doctors. How have you got from working with your mum and dad at 9 years old to being a solicitor, and why did it go down that path? Talk to me about that. Were you academic? You're super intelligent, aren't you? So
no, not necessarily. In fact, at school I wasn't very academic.
Were you not?
And I struggled at school. I was good at sports and music, still am at both of those. And I always prioritised those because they were more fun at school. I really struggled with grasping, like algebra. But as I got a bit older, towards like my AS and A2 levels, I wasn't doing very well with my AS levels. And Mum said, do you want to go on like a revision course, like to cram for the exams? And I did. I took that course, which was at Oxford University. It was just a course designed for school children, but it was held at a university with some of the university lecturers. And I found the way they taught was so different to like my school teachers. So I grasped things that I hadn't grasped, and that revision was really helpful for me.
Can you figure out what it was? What can you name? How?
It's like they were talking to you as adults rather than school teachers, because school teachers deal with children, and at uni it is a very different feeling. So I mean, I grasped concepts which I hadn't grasped, and I was allowed to discuss and ask questions and ask things which were probably quite silly, which I might not have done in a group of my school class peers, but could do at this revision course.
For the fear of...
Yeah, just fear of looking silly, and because I thought, well, everyone else gets it, why don't I? What's wrong with me? But actually, it was a really useful way to sort of challenge my own thoughts, and I loved that. And I remember coming home from the revision course and saying to my parents, well, I'm definitely going to university if that's what it's like, because like we'd been talking about that, and I did. I went to university and did a politics degree first. That was my dad's only requirement was I enjoyed what I did. Like I had a focus that I found fascinating. And so I did politics, and I was a lot more interested in it then than I am now. I'm far less interested in politics now. But actually what that taught me was about the foundations of politics. So I liked the theory. I liked learning about, conservatism and fascism and feminism and how it all started. And I learned about the great political thinkers like Plato and Aristotle and Machiavelli. I found that fascinating. But during my 3-year politics degree, I did some research in the House of Lords. And I watched a law being debated and going back and forth between the Commons and the Lords as it did then. And it was the Equality Act that I saw, and I was fascinated with how laws became made and how, the highest court, like the highest power in our land, figured that out and how it was then communicated. So I said to my parents, I think I'd like to do a law degree after politics. And my dad's view was law and accounts is always going to be helpful if you're ever in business. It's not going to be a problem for you to have that. So I did my conversion to law and then my LPC. So I spent 5 years in Nottingham studying over the course of politics and law. And then I chose, after you finish doing your law degree and legal practice course, which is what you do if you want to become a solicitor, at least it was the option then, you go to do a training contract with a law firm. Now you can go in-house as well and do that with businesses. But I liked the idea of working for a private practice law firm that had quite a broad range of law they practiced, because that gives you a good training. So I did training in litigation, property, commercial and franchising. And I loved franchising. And that was such a natural fit for me when I did it, because I understood it. And I think it is nuanced enough that people who do general commercial contracts don't really get it unless they've had experience with businesses in that sector. And I'd been going to franchise exhibitions since I was a teenager. So like it was not a new thing for me to go and show up as the law firm at a franchise exhibition. And in fact, I knew lots of people there and I loved it. So, having gone as a drain doctor when I was in my teenage years to going as Lee's Prior with my first firm as a young professional, I really enjoyed it. And the industry is such a nice industry. It's one of the few industries where the lawyers are actually really great people and they're all quite collaborative. I'm frequently talking to other lawyers in the sector and I refer work to other people if I'm not able to act or if it's a discipline I don't have, because the franchise lawyers are really good at what they do and we work quite well together.
What would you say it takes to be a good lawyer? in any aspect, what would you say? If you was a young lawyer, maybe someone who works under you or another firm was watching this, what would you say to them would take to
That's a great question.
Yeah, because it sounds like to me you need a great communicator, but maybe if I'm wrong, just talk to me about
There are some great lawyers who aren't great communicators that I've worked with and I've seen in the past. They can be technically brilliant lawyers, but not very natural at interpersonal skills. I'd say law brings in all sorts. I mean, the different types of law firm attract different people. The different areas of law attract different personalities. In terms of what I'd say it's essential is to be able to listen and understand an issue first, and then to advise in a way that's clear and concise to really help someone understand what the issues are and what their options are. And I love doing that. That's the best bit about it. It's why I went into being a solicitor rather than a barrister, say. I much preferred having that long-term relationship with clients that was going to go on for several years. And I've had some clients who were clients of mine when I was a trainee, back in 2009, which seems like a long time ago now. And it's really nice to have that, to see the progression of their businesses, because you can advise so much better if you know them, their personality as directors, their culture of their business, their attitude to risk. It's much easier to give them good advice. And that's why most lawyers don't give blanket advice. It's more tailored to that business, and it's nuanced. I think
from my journey with solicitors so far, I'm usually a bundle of frustration and think everything's right, and then I offload to a solicitor, and the solicitor kind of puts it all, neats it all out, and kind of goes, okay, well, this is that, and this is this, and this is that, and this is our best way forward, or maybe you shouldn't do this. And
yeah, definitely. And I think lawyers should be quite good, hopefully, at looking at things dispassionately. Often, when it comes to me, my clients are frustrated because something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And that's usually a case of helping them calm down, see the bigger picture, because this is a real frustration, a thorn in their side. And it's probably been bubbling for a while before they talk to me about it.
Yeah, because it costs money.
Yeah, exactly. It costs money, but also it's likely to be a longer headache if they don't deal with it. And I remember sometimes the advice I've given has been the practical commercial advice that's needed rather than just the legal advice. And that's a big part, because I grew up in franchising and I was a franchisor. I consider being a franchisor first before I was a lawyer. And I was a director of Drain Doctor and a shareholder before we sold. So I saw it from that perspective, and that's always the most important thing for me. Like, the law should be there to help and give guidance with the contract, but it's actually about the business that's happening that's the most important part, and it's figuring out a commercial solution within the bounds of the contract that's been drafted. Yeah. I appreciate not everyone gets excited about franchise agreements the way I do, but
no, it was more about the ability to stop the emotions of someone seeking your advice, how you don't get emotive around it and you just give clear advice, even though you might know that person, have a relationship with that client. You're kind of pausing all them emotional thoughts, aren't you, and saying, right, okay.
Yeah, and I think
that's because that's what you really need. You need someone to give you absolute clarity, don't you, and take all the emotions out of it, because they're like, she said, he said, this did, that, this did, they don't understand that, and you're like,
and the thing is, I actually used to be quite nervous around emotions, because I'd consider myself a fairly emotional person, and that means different things to different people. It doesn't mean I go to pieces at everything. It doesn't mean I'd like punch a hole in the wall if I was angry. Like, I consider my emotions are quite close to the surface, and I think that's part of the human experience. It's an important part. But it wasn't until my coaching training, and I actually did a specialist training in emotions coaching, about how valuable it is to be able to understand emotions so that you can get some freedom emotionally, and that helps inform how I treat my legal clients who are coming to me with emotional issues. Now, granted, in commercial areas and corporate areas of law, it's usually less emotional than it is in, for example, probate or disputes, divorce, anything like that. There's a lot more emotion when it's personal stuff often, but business is personal to the directors, particularly if it's a family business, particularly if their parents are involved, particularly if their kids are involved. Like, it's and if they really care about their business and they want it to be done right, it can get emotional too. So I think I used to shy away from talking about emotions with anyone, because I felt like I was quite emotional, so I'd be getting wrapped up in that too. But actually, it was probably a disservice to both coaching and legal clients to not allow that emotional stuff to happen. Because I read somewhere, and I don't know the full facts and figures, but if you allow your emotion to come up, whatever that emotion is, say fear, for example, if you allow it to come up and you give it 90 seconds to actually process, rather than trying to push it down or, drink it away or distract it with social media or anything else, if you give it that time, you'll often figure out a lot of ways to deal with it yourself. Like, your brain's very good at trying to figure things out. But we try not to have the emotion, probably because as children we were told, oh, don't cry about that, or no need getting worked up about that. And when you have the emotional reaction as an adult, the response is often just to push it down so you don't feel it, because it's inconvenient at the time, or because you were never taught to deal with it as a child. So I think it's actually really important just to give space to people. And in my coaching conversations, which are different to my legal advice conversations, sometimes it's just giving someone silence and space without judgment to process that, and you'd be amazed what comes up. I'm interested about your coach. See, I would love to do that coaching piece in the future, because I kind of coach franchisees now, and I think being a leader in a business and a manager in a team, you have a coaching element in your life anyway. So maybe retirement plans would be that in the future, maybe one day, but maybe. Well, and coaching was never part of my plan. I was struggling at my last law firm. I was there for 2 years in total, but about 18 months in, I just felt like I was going through the motions, and I got really bogged down in it. It's not a bad firm. It's a great firm with really great lawyers, but I didn't feel like I fit there at all. And it was as though I just wasn't being used. And I have a real problem with like underutilized potential. And I felt like I had so much more to give than was being got out of me. And I was having a particularly bad day, and I was in the kitchen in the office, and one of the other lawyers came in, a partner in the firm who I really respect. And she said, "You don't look like your normal happy self." And I said, "I am not. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I just feel so like disengaged." And she said, "Have you ever had coaching?" And I had vaguely heard of coaching, but I didn't really know anything about it. And I said, no, I'd never thought of it. And a bit later, she emailed me a contact that she'd used previously, or that she rated. And I got in touch. And later that same day, I had a coaching conversation after work. And it's probably the most, like, apart from qualifying as a lawyer, it's probably the most transformative hour of my professional life to that point.
Wow.
Because it just helped me unpack a load of stuff that I wasn't dealing with, I wasn't admitting. Because, you know, there is this sort of slight, let's just carry on, we'll probably get through it, it might just be a bad time. And I realised that in that coaching conversation, that where my values were and what I was doing every day were quite different. So I realised two things. One, that I wasn't happy in the role I was currently in, doing what I was currently doing. And two, that coaching had to be part of my future. And I was like, this is the bit that's been missing. Not just the bit that I need, but the bit that the world needs. Like, I feel that so many people need that. So shortly after that, I was talking to Nina Moran-Watson, who I work with now, who I've known for years in the industry, and she is phenomenal. She's a great lawyer, and she's such a lovely person. And I was talking to her at a franchise exhibition and said, I'm really not happy, and I'm having conversations with my firm about how I move on. And she said, do you want to come work with me? And I've never looked back. It's been the best 7 years. Like, it's a very different style of working, but I think I'm a better lawyer for it. I think also being a coach has made me a better lawyer. And I just feel like I found my groove, because at my previous firm, I was working in corporate, and I was doing a lot of corporate commercial work as well as a bit of franchising, but the balance was wrong. Like, as far as I'm concerned, there are plenty of corporate lawyers. There's quite enough of them. I wanted to be a franchise specialist, and there are fewer of us. And the ones that there are passionate about franchising. They want franchising to work well. They want it to be ethical. They want to work in line with the BFA's code of ethics. You know, there's a lot of good people in franchising, and I thought that was where my family was. Not just my actual family, but my franchise family.
It's an amazing community of people in it.
So good, so good. And everyone's happy to share. Like, franchisors share with other franchisors, even their competitors. They share their best practice, their feelings, their knowledge, the trials and tribulations.
I literally rang some of my competitors this week. One of our biggest competitors, and had a really good chat with them, because I just wanted to offload a little bit and find out what they're doing and how they're going about recruitment and solutions. So I think it's an amazing space to be in. I need to ask about coaching a little bit more, just because I'm intrigued. So do you have like a qualification? How do you apply?
Because I was already qualified as a lawyer, you don't have to be qualified to be a coach, but because I was qualified as a lawyer, I wanted to be qualified as a coach.
Yeah.
And arguably I'm now more qualified as a coach than I am as a lawyer. I'm at like master's level with coaching.
Wow.
So I did an ILM Level 7 in executive coaching and mentoring. And since then I've done other CPD and like the emotions coaching training I mentioned. All of which are sort of master's level training. So I did that because I felt like that gave me really solid foundations on which to build. And again, then you can niche down better when you realise what's out there. So whilst I worked at a firm that had a much broader offering and I wanted to focus on franchising, that's because I knew what the other offerings were and I knew how they fit together, but I wanted to focus on my area. With coaching, it's sort of the same. There's a lot of areas that you can coach on. And I really wanted to focus on particularly professionals who are struggling to achieve their goals and to live a life in accordance with their values. And no professionals really talk about that, particularly female professionals. They just think that they've got to keep going on this path that has been carved out by previous lawyers, accountants, doctors, whatever it might be, and that's sort of the only way to do things. And certainly when I was there, I never thought there was a way off the path until I just jumped and hoped for the best. Yeah. And I didn't completely leave law. A lot of people do want to leave their profession and do something else, but they feel like the last 20 years of their life, they've been that professional, and that's a huge part of their identity. So I developed a system called From Profession to Passion, and the PASSION of passion is a 7-step process I go through with my coaching clients on that, finding out what their purpose is, their core values, what makes them tick. Then I look at assessing where they are now, what is working, what they like about their current role, what they don't like, what ideally they'd have differently. I go through the skills they've got, not just the professional qualifications, but the wider set of skills they have in their life, which could be vast compared to the 1 or 2 letters they have after their name. And then the structure they've got and the support system they've got, because that's a big part if you're going to make any kind of change. And then the information they need, what resources do they need, what options are available, and then the next steps of how to move that forward. So it's a system I've created having coached a number of professionals through a career change, and that career change might be they want to do the same job somewhere else, but they're looking at an organisation whose values and culture align with their own, or they want to do a different job but they like their current organisation, or they want to do a part-time role and then do something else, or they want to have a bit more of a portfolio career, or they want to do something completely different. And they just needed, a lot of the people say they need permission to do that in their own head. And they can only give themselves permission, nobody else can. But I think with some of the more traditional professions, there are routes to go down which don't suit everybody. And that's what I wanted to try and help disrupt slightly. Not for the purpose of being disruptive, but for the purpose of helping people achieve their potential.
I feel like I want to stop the podcast and go for a session. Just probably put this podcast off and just go downstairs and just do like 2-hour session with
you. Why not? But you're big into potential. I look at the way you talk about your team and people. It's about getting the best out of them, and that's really what coaching's all about.
Honestly, it's like cuts through me. Like I get so upset when I see people not like Kay knows this. Like it's the biggest thing in my fucking life.
Yeah,
I hate it.
Yeah,
I hate it when I see people not achieving their potential because of whatever element in their life, and I look at them and go, "Wow, it actually gets me upset." I'm getting upset now. There's someone that me and Kay both know, and he's amazing, and he's not going to reach his potential because of the situations he's in, and it's fucking upsetting to the core. Yeah, it's upsetting to the core, and it's interesting that it's makes me want to definitely get some coaching sessions from you. But I mean, I've got a coach as well, but I'm not. Emily's been my coach in the past. She's been a great coach because she calls me out my bullshit, which is great.
And you need that. And you need coaching for different things. And I mean, I always have that conversation with a new coaching client about, what coaching is and what it isn't, and like how the coaching it sometimes will feel a bit uncomfortable. It'll be challenging. You might be held accountable. You might be called out. But it should be a safe space in all of that. It's not a judgmental, like
it really is
condemnation. It's a good space.
It's very much like counselling.
I mean, there are definitely overlaps, and I think actually when I was nervous to talk about emotions, it was because I felt like emotions were the purview of counselling, and they can be if they're related to, trauma that hasn't been dealt with, it can absolutely be counselling territory. But I think they overlap more than I perhaps believed they did. But if it's truly backwards looking, if it's figuring out stuff that happened in childhood and you can't unlock that to move forward, then it's probably counselling. And I have a few counsellors that I refer people to who I'm coaching, and sometimes the counselling and the coaching can go alongside each other. It can be done simultaneously, but dealing with different parts of different people. But coaching, I always think, is forward looking. Like, as I was sitting in my law firm thinking, I'm just not happy. I feel like I've got so much more to give, but I'm just going through the motions and I'm just doing like what I have to do to get through, and I'm hating it really. But I have all this potential. I was lucky and I was privileged that I have, really supportive parents and a supportive partner at the time. And I was really able to talk about that stuff. And I had the ability to get coaching, and I had people that would recommend that to me. But that's one of the reasons I've created this system. I'm also writing a book on it because I think there are a lot of people stuck who just don't know where to turn. And that upsets me as well, people not being able to ask for advice and help. And I think with, something that happens more in business is, like you say, you're coaching people all the time. You're coaching your franchisees, probably your employees, and having that culture is really important. And certainly I didn't feel that way in law firms. I think it is better now. But when I was in law firms originally, I thought a lot of my work was, it was being supervised by really great lawyers, and they were teaching me how to be a great lawyer. But there wasn't the extra stuff around that, which is the more human element. And I think for any really good supervision, it has to take into account a bit more than just the work they're doing. So probably the way people are promoted at law firms is the better lawyer they are, the more they bill, the more clients they have, the more promoted they are. So in the end, you get partners who are now in charge of 20 people or 30 people in a team, and they really don't want to be managers and supervisors. They want to be the partner, and they want to have that name. They want the profit share or the salary that goes with it, but they don't necessarily want the burden or issues of dealing with the whole team. Whereas I love that. I love dealing with people, because if you put people first, then actually they're everything, and that helps your whole organisation move forward. Do they have a concept with a lawyer's in charge of the team, and they get back from what the team make, and then they don't have to do any cases themselves? Or well, yeah, most partners and heads of team will feed the rest of their team, so they'll get work in, and they've got the longer established client bases with the more lucrative clients, and they'll feed work down. So as far as I'm concerned, it's absolutely essential all of those junior members of the team, right from sort of trainees and newly qualified lawyers up to the senior associates who are just begging to be partners or directors next. I think it's important that they're all supported so that they do the best job they can, so that everyone's pulled up. But my experience was that overwhelmingly it was focused on the actual technical work rather than the wider picture. And that's what I wanted to redress slightly.
Can I just skew off on a big tangent? Something that's jumped into my head. How would you coach someone who has been coachable in the past to a certain level, but then they think they know best now, or they feel like they've always got an answer for, like, if you had someone in your team that's got to a certain level within their career, and they've been happy to be taught in the past, but then they got to a certain level and they kind of don't feel like they can be taught anymore. You feel like there's a level of coaching that's surpassed. Do you think there's a way of...
Sounds like a comfort zone.
Yeah, it's almost like they know everything and you can't teach them anything anymore.
Well, I think that does happen, and I think people hit a wall somewhere, and it's hard to then see anything else beyond the wall. But just around one side of the wall might be a whole different thing that they haven't thought about. So I guess it's probably going back to their drivers and their values and their vision for their life and how that fits in with the organisation they're working for. Which is why I think it's so important that organisations have coaching as part of their mentality. It's something that it should be happening right from the top down to the bottom. Like, whatever the hierarchy you have, everyone should be offered and able to have coaching, whether it's coaching because you've got coaching skills in your organisation already, or because you bring in external coaches, and that everyone who's being coached then can coach down as well. And you can coach up as well. I feel like it was Richard Branson who said he's got like a very young coach. He's got a 19 or 20-year-old coach, because actually, even though that's not a mentor in the way that he would have had mentors showing him how to do things, he said it challenges me to think in a totally different way. And I love that. I love the idea of, coaching from very different areas and, getting experience from different areas. That's crucial. So it might be that, that person in an organisation who seems to be in a comfort zone and not quite so coachable at the moment, they might respond to somebody else in the organisation, and they might respond to just, you know, approaching things in a different way. They might have got into the situation I was, where they just felt a bit stuck and they were going through the motions rather than thinking, right, how do I get out of this? What's next?
It's like they're not hitting their full potential because they've decided what their original goals were have changed. It's an interesting. I'm in the space with it. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think most people don't know their potential. I certainly don't know mine.
No.
But I also know when I'm not reaching it and when I'm falling short of it. Yeah. And that's sort of one of my personal values, my really core values, is helping people to understand and reach their potential. Yeah. And often when you get there, then there's more to go as well, because I think potential is fairly limitless for most people. But not having any feel of like where you could go is paralysing sometimes.
Yeah,
that could be it.
That's another way, isn't it? Of not knowing where you could go there. It's also interesting.
Yeah.
What a deep conversation. I feel like we need a gin and tonic already.
Exactly. We should talk about something easy, like, you know, the weather or.
Well, maybe we can talk about something easy, because I guess being a solicitor, it sounds very enjoyable and you love your work and you thrive upon it, but there must be some stress there. Yeah. Because I stress in my job. Yeah. Talk to me about how Vicki Mitman deals with stress.
Well, a few different ways, really.
How do you deal with being down?
I do get down, but I don't stay down for long. That's, I suppose, has always been a thing. And I've got really good, supportive family and friends, and I reach out to them when I'm starting to feel a bit down. I used to just try and deal with it all myself and get myself into a deep hole and struggle more. But now I'm much better at reaching out to people when I feel like I might be.
Did you have some coaching around that? What made you make that decision? It's a funny one, that, isn't it? I
just realised that, you know, when people say, "Oh, I'm always here for you. I'm, you know, here whenever you need," you always think, "But yeah, are you? You've got your own stuff going on." And I was like, maybe they are, because I know I am. If people ring me at 2 a.m. and say I'm having a terrible time, I'll get up and talk to them. Yeah. And, you know, whilst I don't put that on people regularly, it's certainly, I do reach out to people and say, right, I'm having a bit of a difficult day. Can I just talk about something? Or even just, you know, sending a voice note to a trusted friend. Like, sometimes it's just helpful to deal with that, because it does get stressful. Yeah. And it's when it's stressful from different areas. It might be like a parent's unwell and, you know, you've got a huge amount of work coming in and you feel like you're drowning, and a friend is telling you about something difficult going on in their life. There can be stress from lots of different areas. But I do talk to people, and I do use my network and my support structure, and I encourage people to use me as well. The other thing is I do quite a lot of activity, so I need to walk every day quite a long way. And I take my energetic Labrador out for lots of walks, Missy. And frankly, no matter if it's snowing or raining or whatever, I'm out there, and I always feel better for it. I've never come back from a walk thinking I really wish I hadn't bothered. Like, it's always good. And exercise has been a pretty consistent part of my life, and sport, all of it. But I've all through my life. But I've done different things at different times, and right now it's weight training. I've been doing that for about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years, and I love it. I love feeling strong physically. And even if I've had a terrible night's sleep and I'm due to meet my PT at 7:45 in the morning, and I can't think of anything I'd rather do less than that, I always go, and I always walk out with like a bounce in my step, and I'm so glad I did it. Because feeling physically strong helps me to feel emotionally and mentally strong.
So profound. That is so true, isn't it? That?
It's all so linked. And for years, I didn't really focus on that part. And when I was at my last firm, I wasn't focusing on fitness. And I don't know, I feel like if I was watching Vicki now as she was then, I'd be like, you need to do some exercise. You need to do something. Because I also do other things. I have hobbies. Like, I love gardening. I grow vegetables. I love singing. I love travel. Singing, yeah. I always sang. I was classically trained at school and then operatically after school.
Were you really?
Yeah.
I love that about you. I need to hear you sing at some point.
But music's really important. Like, I remember my dad and I would sing in the car together. Like, he'd say, right, let's pick a musical, like South Pacific, and we'd sing all the songs we could remember from South Pacific. Yeah. And I loved that. I loved the just the joy it brought me, and like, singing often brings people together. Everyone, you know. Yeah, I
literally had the podcast last week with Ellie. We talked about singing.
Yeah.
Do you know Ellie?
No.
She works with what's it called?
Gino. Gino. And actually, I think I have met her once or twice. I don't know her well. I didn't know she sang.
Yeah, no, she doesn't sing, but she's into drum and bass. And we started the podcast off talking about that, and it's a bit mad, isn't it, Kay? Because every podcast is getting very similar in terms of traits of leaders and people who manage teams and been successful within their roles, is that music's a key denominator in it and movement's a key denominator in it. And I love it because it makes us all very human.
Yeah. Yeah, and I realised when I was looking back at sport, because a lot of people don't realise I am sporty or fit and active, and that's another thing I like to change, because I've been overweight for the better part of my adult life, but I've also been very fit and active, and it's very easy to have assumptions about people that they probably aren't. But I love it when I get talking to people. They light up when they talk about sport. And I mentioned, when I was at school, I focused more on sport and music because it was more natural to me. I played for my school's first 11 hockey team when I was 15. Like, I was playing with 18-year-olds because I loved it and I was good at it.
No way.
And I played netball and tennis, and then at university I was on the rowing team, and that's hard. That rowing is tough, and that's probably when I was at my physically fittest. And I loved it. And now for some reason I found weight training, and I think probably like 25-year-old Vicki wouldn't have been interested in weight training, thinking it was like the purview of men, and certainly that section of the gym that most women don't feel very comfortable going to.
No.
And I hate that, but I mean, I work with a personal trainer because it suits me that she's got all of the kit, and she also, like, she'll tell me, to go up a weight grade or to go up a set, and I don't think of doing that, but I don't have to. Like, she's there to do that, and she'll watch my form, she'll correct it, and I love that. But as a result, I've got to lifting weights that I never knew I could lift, and I think that's fascinating. Because again, it's about potential. I have no idea where my strength will stop, and I hope I never find it.
Movement is medicine, isn't it? I think the gym is a big part of my life. It's definitely a big part of Kay's life. We're both kind of on our different journeys.
Because you train together, don't you?
Yeah, unfortunately, Kay trains with me. Yeah.
And put him to shame with the big weights.
Quite right. Love that.
But I think if you just, I wish everyone did some sort of movement more regularly. I think a lot of people do, but I don't think they do it enough.
Yeah, I think it's about finding what works for you as well.
Yeah, it's finding your own thing, but making sure you do it. And I think you're just generally just a better person by having some sort of stress outlet. Yeah. And if movement and getting outside is definitely, walking the dog every day. And
love it. And there's nothing like more positive than, dogs are so curious. Yeah. And like Missy thinks everything's the best thing in the world. So, but just seeing her charging around, sniffing everything, just being curious, I love it. It's a bit like meditation, because I'm not focusing on my own thoughts. I'm just sort of watching her, and then I'm listening to birds singing or like seeing the sunrise. And it's just wonderful. It feels so very present. And I come home and I'm like, now I can tackle anything. Now whatever hits me, at least I've started my day well. And I do that. I'm quite strict now. I don't look at emails before I walk. I don't take calls before that. Like, unless it was an emergency call. From a loved one. I'm quite keen to carve out that time first for me and walking the dog, and then after that everything else. And that suits me. It used to be that I would go for a walk at lunchtime or I'd go after work, but that didn't really work well for me, because there's so many times I would work through lunch, or I'd just be too tired, or suddenly it's raining and I don't really feel like it. Like, I like doing it in the morning so that I can come back.
There,
and it's putting me first. So years ago I was talking to my dad about money and finances, and I promise this is relevant. He gave me a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, which is like an old-fashioned parable about money and wealth, and about how to look after it and save it and invest it. But one of the key points in the book was about paying yourself first. So the way most people do it is they earn money, they pay all their bills, and then if there's any left over, that goes into their pocket. And one of the parables in this book was about when you get your money in, some of it goes to you first, and then you figure out how to pay all your bills from the remainder. Yeah. And you can also factor in, like, if you're paying back debt or mortgage or anything, some of that comes out as well. But then you either learn to live within your means properly, but having always paid yourself first, or you learn how to reduce your overall costs or to make more money to cover them. But it's the essential part of paying yourself first. And I feel like when I do my morning walk, to bring it back to that, it's about paying myself first, like filling me up first, and then I can run for a lot longer. Does that make sense?
It's lovely.
In my head, that was, sensible.
The financial one's better. I was thinking, like, that's a really good concept with the financial one, but I actually realised is that I do that as well. Yeah. So I'm quite regular with a massage. Yeah. I pretty much have one every single week, and not every time I can afford it. Yeah. But I make sure I book it because
it's important.
It's important to me. Yeah. I have the gym membership, And yeah, it's not a cheap gym membership.
No.
It's
But
not
it's
the most
important.
expensive, but it's important.
Yeah.
And I think
And
if I
all
didn't,
that's for you.
yeah. If I didn't have that, and also the barbers, I go to the barbers and get a beard trim. Those things are so. I think I don't understand some of the people who work here. They don't do those things, but then moan about having a bad back, or then moan that the nails aren't done, or moan about the hair not being done. And I'm like, you might blame that on money, but I think it's blamed on you not spending your money wisely.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a comparison there, because I'll see that they go to the pub at the weekend, but they have had the nails done. Well, I know that hour getting your nails done isn't just about having your nails done; it's about having an hour's space for yourself.
Yeah. It's about the priority, what they're prioritising.
Yeah, but
because
the
cost of a few drinks at the pub or your nails being done is the same.
Exactly, but they're happy to go and get some wine and some food and go to the pub that night, because they see that space and time as downtime. But what they're actually missing out on is that hour space they gave themselves, and then the month long of having nails that make them feel good every day.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting concept, that, isn't it? How people don't always pay into themselves. I love the way you've just coined that phrase.
Because everything I do for me is paying into me first.
Yeah.
And I think that's essential, because then I can be the better lawyer, the better coach, the better daughter, the better friend, whatever it might be. I'm able to do that if I look after myself. And there was a time a couple of years ago where my dad had some surgery, and I moved home to just be part of the recovery of that, because it made it easier for both of them to have me nearby. But if I didn't look after me, it would have been much harder to do that, because I was still driving back to, like, once they were up and about for the day and settled, I'd go back to my house, do a bit of work, walk the dog, and then go home. But again, like, if I hadn't focused on what am I eating at the moment, like, let's drink less at the moment, because actually it was needed if I needed to drive them anywhere. I didn't need to have alcohol in my system. And whilst I do drink, it's rare now compared to like how I was maybe 20 years ago. Yeah. And just like, am I walking every day? Am I breathing? Am I, doing yoga or stretching before bed? Am I keeping myself off social media? Am I doing skincare? Like, there's stuff that it doesn't take much, and it can be, next to nothing, but it can make a huge difference and it compounds over time if you do that stuff for yourself.
100%. It's so true.
And it's so important.
It's so true. Like, me and Kay talk about this literally every single day of our thing. I pretty much talk to Kay every single day of my life. I have done for like 6 years. And
How does Kay feel about that?
Yeah.
It's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
and I think we have that conversation.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
Some way.
And then I think it's just, I wish more people, and there's lots of people do, evidently you do as well, but I wish there'd be more people did, because if you did, you'd find, also there's joy in it all as well.
Yeah.
There's happiness.
Sometimes you have to look for that, but it's always there.
Happiness is found sometimes, or, it goes and comes, happiness, but
of course it does.
I think when you're paying into yourself, you cope with life a lot better, like you do with the stress of things, because you think, well, at least I've done 10k today, or at least I've done my 10,000 steps, or at least I went to the gym. I might be tired now, but I did the gym, and I've paid into myself, or I've done a cold water dip, or I've walked the dog,
or I made myself a healthy dinner rather than ordering a Domino's. And it's not to say that you'll never do that. It's just that if you can prioritise it sometimes, then those are all little wins.
100%. How bad now. Listen, there's no shame in crying at 1 o'clock in the morning in a McDonald's car park with the Big Mac, because I have done it and I will continue to do it at some point. But do I wish that I'd got healthy food in me at some point? But I also think sometimes it's okay to cry. Yeah. Doesn't have to have McDonald's, there's other restaurants available. But
it's a go-to that makes you feel comforted at the time.
At the time, yeah. But I think if you can plan now. She's a freak because she plans all the lunches.
That's why she's so fit and healthy. Why we're all looking to her for advice.
But I've got it to a T now where I'm going to Sainsbury's at least to buy a steak, and then making something instead of kind of going to a butcher shop. But although there's nothing wrong with the butcher shop, I feel like sometimes it's a bit more mass produced. Yeah. And I think also that pit space of buying the thing and making sure you're doing. There's also a psychological process of you're being healthy to yourself by making that lunch sometimes as well. It's interesting, like you're, I'd say, a very successful solicitor, an amazing coach, and I don't know what else you've done yet, and I haven't peeled into it, but the same basics of my life and Kay's life are exactly the same. Yeah. It's just the minimums of what we want to do every day to make ourselves feel better. Get your hair done, get your nails done, go to the gym.
Get your space, whatever you need. I mean, certainly, like my mum's really good at, like, she and I both love cooking, and my dad is in the role of like the great appreciator at home. He's so enthusiastic about anyone doing anything for him. But Mum and I love to cook, and we cook together, and we do a lot of parties where we host together. And she's really good at, like, on the average Tuesday, she'll have figured out what they're having for dinner. She'll have defrosted the right proteins, and she'll have it all like measured out and chopped out, like the mise en place, before she then needs to cook in the evening. Whereas sometimes I'll finish work and it'll be 6:30 and I'll be like, oh, I've got to make dinner. And then I'm kind of looking at the fridge thinking, I'm really hungry and I don't want any of this. And I'm so much better if I do what Mum does. And that's the one thing I wish I could be a bit more like her on.
Yeah.
But then she's not into exercise and fitness. And never really was. Like, she was never someone that did that all the time. So I think it's great now, actually, that parents are showing their kids. Like, I know you walk with your kids and stuff, like showing them how important it is to keep fit and strong.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's a different thing to be like being able and capable to do whatever you want to do, whatever that is. And I don't need to be like super strong to be a lawyer. I just find that it helps me personally.
Yeah,
like, there are plenty of lawyers that are runners or that don't do any exercise. There's the whole range. But for me, it helps me get into the right mindset to then do my job if I look after my health.
Yeah. It might be a far right question. Your mum and dad had a drain doctor, and then what happened? Did they sell it at some point?
We sold it.
And then have they done anything since?
So my dad wrote a couple of books afterwards, things that he wanted to do, but he was 83 when we sold the company.
Was he? So he worked all the way up to 83?
Yeah, and actually he'd still work now.
Yeah.
I was having a really great conversation with him a few weeks ago, actually. It kind of gave me an insight into his mindset. I said, like, I'd read this question in a newspaper or something, or a magazine, saying, like, if you were stripped of everything that you have, like your house, your car, your clothes, like literally everything was taken from you, all of your current material possessions, what would you have left? And I thought it was a really good question. And I asked Dad, and he said, my attitude, like my ability to do whatever I want, my ability to help people. I'd train people, I'd mentor people, I'd write something, I'd figure out how to make myself valuable. Yeah. And that's how I'd build it back up. And he's 92. Like, to have that kind of mindset, most people would go, I don't know, I've lost everything. Like, I've spent all my life building it up and it's just taken. And they'd spend time being angry about, like, not having stuff. Yeah. Or say, well, that would never happen. They'd be defensive about it rather than be like, I'd make it work. Like, and my dad's got this fairly, some people call it like cavalier, but I think it's quite enthusiastic ability to, like, he trusts in himself and what he can do. And he's like, I've never felt like I wouldn't be able to do something of use.
Yeah, it's interesting. My dad's had the same concept. I've had
I love that.
It's like almost like a lone wolf kind of approach to, like, right, okay, throw me to whatever, the wolves or whatever, and I come out leading the pack kind of conversation, a bit like that kind of thing. It's almost like having, so it's self-belief. It's kind of what your dad's kind of saying.
Absolutely.
It's like, I believe enough in myself to be able to get myself out of any situation. Yeah. And then also having a really strong character. So if he didn't have all them things around him, any material possessions, he'd still be able to construct some really good conversation. Yeah. Make people believe in him and start something new.
Yeah, and he said, like, everything I've picked up through life, all of my experiences have made me who I am. So I've been able to deal with adversity, I've been able to deal with difficult times, but I've also trained and mentored and supported and motivated people. And in our company, when we were with Drain Doctor, he was the chairman, and my mum was the franchise sales director. And Dad's view was that his day-to-day job wasn't anything specific apart from making sure everybody had the training and the resources they needed. They were empowered to do their jobs, and they knew they could always go to someone if they needed help. But his day-to-day job wasn't anything in particular. And he said that the best leaders really are there to empower everyone to do their jobs and support them to do that, but also to set the creative vision for the organisation and to move it forward. And I love that, because I think a lot of people, particularly in law, at the industry I've been in, they all hold on to their qualifications and their, like, this is who I am. I'm a lawyer. That's what I am. And it's not like being a lawyer is something I do. It's one of the many things I do, but it's one of those, and it's valuable to me. There is a value in it, but it's not the only thing. And I do sometimes get a little bit more, like, bogged down in, well, this is what I do, the nitty gritty. But actually that wider view of it's really fascinating to me, and I love that, and that's what I'd love to be more like him about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, you got the coaching side of it, and you've got the solicitor side of it. What else do you solicitors, lawyer side? What else do you do?
Well, nothing for money. I don't sort of have anything else that I do as income, but I'm fascinated in lots of things. And most recently, I've been working on a vegetable garden, which you'd say is like it's part of my mindfulness, like being outside, being with nature, but watching something grow. And like being able to produce things that feed my family and my friends. And it's amazing. If I go to friends and I'm like, here, I've grown this garlic from scratch and then these tomatoes are homegrown. They're like, this is awesome. Like, and I do it because it's, it takes me away. I spend a lot of time sitting at a desk or standing at my desk sometimes, but I'm in front of screens indoors. That's where the majority of my life is, my working life. So then I like to be outside. I like to be doing something else. And like my dad, because my vegetable garden's at their house, they've got a bigger garden and they were happy to give me a little space in it. And my dad calls it my farm. It is by no means an actual farm, but he says, I've been down to check on your farm. So I like the fact that he's involved. Like he'll go and see things growing. And he said, I've had a chat with the garlic. I've told her to get a wriggle on because it's not doing very well. Like it just passed a bit with me. And because he was a farmer in a previous life, farm manager, and he did agriculture, like he actually had this huge base of knowledge that I never knew anything about until I started saying, I think I'm going to grow some tomatoes this year. And then like it became a thing. And now I grow loads of stuff. So now it's
a hobby with you and your dad to a certain degree. I love that.
And my mum has made it perfectly clear she does not have the hands for gardening. She's got beautiful nails. She's manicured. She wears jewellery. She's just not a gardener. But she's happy to cook anything we prepare and bring into the house.
I want to believe it.
Yeah, and I grow like flowers because it's really good for helping like pollination of other vegetables and other crops. So I grow a lot of flowers, but then I can bring her cut flowers like sweet peas or zinnias and stuff, which I've grown from seed. And she's like, this is so cool. Like the stuff on my kitchen table every week of the summer is from your garden. And I love that. It's just like a little thing, but that makes me really happy. And then I have like hobbies, choir and singing that I do and stuff. So
yeah, well, it's interesting, the gardening thing. I've got a very, very good friend of mine. He's a extremely successful chief executive of a children's charity. And he's big into gardening, and you never know. No one would ever have any concept of it.
I think this is the first time I've said it like in a more public space.
Yeah. But I talked to him about the concept of it and trying to understand it. Why? Because it threw me when I knew about it. But it's exactly what you've just said. It's another project that you can complete, and it's something amazing that can be creative and see something grow. And also that escapism from just day-to-day life of being what his chief exec is, and being, he goes in his garden, he's got an amazing garden, got lots of different plants, knows all the names, what they should be doing, how they should be doing it.
Sounds like he's at a different level.
I think he is. But, because I always like, fucking gardening, like, get me a gardener kind of thing, but...
And I do have a gardener for like my actual garden at home because I don't spend that much time that I want to do all of the weeding and mowing and stuff
he doesn't
myself.
grow vegetables, but he does that side of it, and he does have a gardener to grow cut the grass, but he the plants and the stuff. I've seen it. And, it's interesting, isn't it?
But also, I love the fact that like there's little tiny seed from a tomato from last year's crop. You can grow into an entire plant that's going to yield 100 tomatoes, and I love that. But it's a good metaphor for life. Like it only grows well with good conditions and the right nutrients, the right support, like literally a support structure you put in place for tomatoes because they're heavy. And like all of that comes together. So if you have that in life, that you'll also grow well too. But it's fascinating. Like sometimes if I've had a frustrating or stressful week, just having like a joy at home. Like the first time I grew a butternut squash myself, I was like, this is so cool. Like this was just one little seed in a packet, and 5 months later, here it is, like, looking like a vegetable I can eat. And I know I can just go to the supermarket and buy one. But it just meant something to me that I could grow something like that. I know it.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's quite mindful.
Yeah, it is mindful. One thing just came into my mind is it when we've been a solicitor. How a solicitor, lawyer? What is the right phrase? I don't fucking
solicitor.
Know. Is it the same as a lawyer?
I think lawyer is a general phrase.
Right.
We call ourselves the franchise lawyers, but the majority of the people we would meet in the industry are solicitors, which means we do work with clients over a long period of time. And then you get barristers who tend to come in and do court work.
Right,
and they can be specialists. They can give opinions on the merits of a case, but then usually they get a large bundle of documents. They go through it quickly and they appear at court for however long is needed, a couple of days at court, and they deliver that argument.
Wait, that's what I was going to... Is like... from talking to you now and trying to understand a little bit more about law and a little bit more about it, I guess sometimes cases can go on for quite a while with the because it's more of a communication discussion thing of ironing out the differences, isn't it? A lot of the time. Yeah,
and the back and forth, that communication can easily go on for months and years, depending on the matter. Sometimes they're quick to resolve
because people want it to be resolved.
Yeah, and also the court process, it is costly, it is formal, it takes a lot of management time for businesses, for example, if there's a court case. So there's got to be a very good reason, I think, to actually go all the way to court. And, despite being in franchising for 20 odd years, as a lawyer, 15 years as a lawyer, there really have only been a handful of cases which we talk about a lot because so few actually go all the way to court. Yeah. The ones that do provide us with valuable lessons and principles, which we then sew into our drafting of contracts going forward. But actually, it's not a very litigious area. There are disputes and they can be managed. There's also, other options for managing them, which I think are usually better in a franchise or franchisee relationship, like mediation, sometimes arbitration, other, processes. But and the BFA is quite big on that because it's about collaboration and working together. So, I think it can feel on and on with certain matters, definitely, and that's a longer term stress both for the client and the lawyer dealing with it.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to a little bit. It's like, how do you deal with that long term stress, and then also how do you deal with the loss if you lose the case? Is it something you kind of move on with, or do you kind of?
Well, you kind of have to, because some all the way through life in different areas we win some, we lose some, and that's all part of it. And there'll be some that you win, there'll hopefully be more that you win, because
you're trained in that sort of field. If you felt like the case wasn't right, but the judge or whatever, I don't know how that kind of decision.
Sometimes judges make judgments which seem completely
and then it's kind of this
strange,
ongoing frustration for the rest of your life.
And then there's a court of appeal that you can go to as well. That there are ways to sort of move on, but at the end of the day, even if you've lost and you don't want to go further, or your client doesn't want to go further, it can be frustrating. But there are also, every famous sports player has lost probably more than they've won, but that doesn't mean they're not brilliant at their subject. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that company that you've been advising might still be as strong as ever, and actually this has taught them some valuable lessons. And quite often what I love to see is when there's been a dispute or an issue for one of my clients, what they take from that is usually the last thing I say is, right, we've learned some lessons, so we can look at some of the drafting, we can also look at some of the process, like the recruitment process, and the information we're giving to franchisees, is that up to date and is that relevant, and is it how has that information come to be, so that the appropriate disclaimers and the information we're giving up front is that much tighter now, so people don't feel scared about recruitment because they had a franchisee say something like, well, you didn't tell me that was true, or you misled me in the early stages. Like if franchisors hear that, it can be a case of, actually, I'm now very nervous to say to someone else, another prospective franchisee, how do we do this? So I think it's the lessons learned, and in that case, the failures and the losses, they are there, but they're valuable teachers rather than reasons to give up. And I think that's the more important part. I mean, it's not easy to do. Like, no one likes to lose. But as long as you're always looking at what can we learn from this and how can we then move forward positively. I guess it's always
the case that there could be an argument. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. It's not always.
And sometimes it seems nonsensical. Judgments. I've sometimes read a judgment and I thought, how on earth has he got from here to here, like the judge? And it might be, and sometimes judges don't understand franchising very well. There are very few judges that see franchising a lot because there aren't many franchise cases. So it just goes through a general sort of commercial contract principles, and franchising is one of many, many, many commercial contracts and licenses. But it is nuanced, and we know more about it in this industry.
So sometimes an education piece as well before you go into it.
And sometimes a lot of that is putting the case forward about this is what franchising is on its base level objectively, and then this is subjectively what happened in this case, so that at least you've got something to compare it to. But I think it's always about, and this is a big message for life as well, just the lessons learned, and then failures are just part of it. Interesting. But there's really good stuff too.
The last thing I want to talk to you about is talk to me about your love life. Talk to me about
love life.
Talk to me about who you're with at the minute and what's going on there.
Wow. Well, I've got to say, like, that's not what I was expecting.
I know, but I think we've heard like about your career and your coaching and your family, and that's amazing. But just talk to me about talk to me about who you've got by your side at the minute.
I'm single.
Are you single at the minute?
Yeah. And it took me a while to be happy announcing that, because I'd been with a partner for a long time. We were engaged. It didn't work out. And, you know, I'm still friends with him. He's still a good guy. But I just knew it wasn't right for me. And I think we both knew it wasn't right for either of us.
Yeah.
And I looked at dating for a while. I went on a few dates and nothing seemed to work. So I figured out maybe I'll just spend some time learning more about myself, because I do believe that, you know, we attract who we are. And if we know who we are and we're happy with who we are, then that's who we'll get back. It's a bit of a strange, I don't know if it is truly law of attraction, but I think it's true.
Isn't it true, that guy?
Yeah. But also the people I'm looking for now are more like me now than who I was when I got together with someone. I was 29. I was a different person then.
Yeah.
I'm 10 years older now, and I've got more life experience, and who I might want to spend like the next few years with or the rest of my life with, I have no idea yet. But I know I'm happier with who I am now than who I was then.
What an amazing space to be in.
Yeah. I like that. It's a good question.
Yeah, it's because I'm interesting because I told you before, I'm getting divorced.
Yeah.
I took some time out for myself, went on a few dates, and really quickly understood what I don't want out of life. Yeah. And who I am and how am I going. I still think I'm going through it, to be honest with you, a little bit.
Yeah, you will, but at least you're doing the work. You're doing the healing. Yeah. Because that's how it informs you going forward and the decisions you make.
It's having the ability to reflect, isn't it? Having the ability to reflect. I wish more people had the ability to reflect.
Yeah, and to be comfortable in their own skin. Like I mentioned to you guys earlier that I stayed at a hotel last night and there was no one else around, so I went and had dinner by myself. Now, there were a lot of other people, solo diners in that restaurant, and they were all sitting with laptops or their phones out. And it was like a case of you can't be seen to be single and sitting in a restaurant without any kind of distraction. People have a book to read or some emails to write, then it's sort of okay. And I was just sitting there looking around, feeling kind of like, it took a while to get comfortable doing it, but also like nothing bad happened. I can take myself out to dinner.
Yeah,
like,
so true.
Why wouldn't I? And
I went for...
I'm a great date for dinner by myself.
I went when I split with left Charlene and we split up, and I went for a big period of like change, and I'm still going through that period of change. But learning to be myself was tough. That was tough. But I took myself a few places, had a few panic attacks, had a few cries, had a few moments in the car where I think, what the fuck am I doing this for? What's the point of being on my own? Like, what am I going to get out of it? And then doing it and going through that process. Yeah.
It can be really hard to be lonely all of a sudden, particularly if you've been with someone for a long time, if you've got family together.
But it's that patience that you're not lonely, you're just alone. And they're
different things.
They're different things, aren't they?
Yeah, and I quite like living alone. I said this to my friend the other day. She was like, "Don't you feel like quite lonely in your house?" I was like, "No, it's exactly as I want it. It's immaculate. There's no mess anywhere." And but kind of like it's how I want it to be. Whereas when you're with someone, there's compromise, and that's okay too. Like there are times in your life when that makes more sense. Yeah. And actually, you want to compromise because you want that person in your life. But for now, I'm never alone. I've always got a Labrador, and she's the most enthusiastic being in the world. But I see a lot of people. I host and entertain a lot, and I go out to visit people. But I'm equally as happy in my own skin and by myself now, which I never used to be. I used to feel like something was wrong with me because I didn't have a boyfriend when I was in my 20s and my friends were getting together with people. I thought, well, what's wrong with me? Like, why don't I have that? And then when I got it, I think I was so grateful and happy to have it. That I didn't really know whether it was what I wanted because that wasn't really a factor. Whereas now I'm much clearer on what I don't want and what I do want.
It's incredible, that, Vic.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But it's nice. It's kind of good to hear that also you've been through something similar. Like figuring out who you want.
Literally figuring out who I am. I don't know if everyone gets a chance to do that in life.
No.
I think it's quite a dark.
And not everyone wants to do it. Because it's scary.
It's a dark place. It's not a nice. It's not, and I'm still going through it, you know. Yeah. Like it's not like I've completed it and I need this big flag to say that I know who I am anymore.
Done.
But I definitely feel like it's a fucking horrible thing to just be with someone and then be on your own, and just learning that process, but eventually getting comfortable who you are, and then that identity thing of like who you are and how you operate and how you go about doing things as well, and being comfortable with that is also...
Was living in alignment with my values was the biggest thing for me. So some of my core values are courage, kindness and love. And when I say kindness, a friend of mine said, like, oh, that's true, you are a nice person. I was like, well, I don't actually mean nice. Like, as far as I'm concerned, kind is being honest with someone, being transparent with them, even if it might be painful for them. It's actually a kindness not to keep going in a relationship, for example, that's not right for you. Yeah. And I probably went on in my last relationship, longer than I should have. Yeah. Because at the time you don't want to break someone's heart. You don't want to be upset. And you don't want to be alone and all of those things. But actually, when I had the courage to say, this isn't right, this isn't working, and when I could say that, I felt actually that was a kind way to do it. It was a respectful way to break up, as far as it can be. It wasn't easy, but it was the right thing to do for both of us. And we now have a friendship aside from our relationship. I've known him since school. Like, it would be weird not to have him in my life. But like all of that, I realised that was much more in alignment with my core values than how I'd been acting in that relationship. So figuring out the values was a big part of it. And I learned that through my coaching journey, like becoming a coach myself. You have a lot of your own coaching. I still have my own coaching, and it's so valuable. So now I'm clearer on my values. I'm also clear that if there's behavior in my life that's not in alignment with the values, that's why it's not feeling right, is because it's not in alignment with the things that are important to me. So yeah, that's why I focus on those so much. And it's one of the first things I do with my professional coaching clients in that passion system. The first is purpose, and a lot of that's about values and being aligned with those values, because often that shows where things aren't working. Yeah. And most people don't know their core values if you ask them.
I know some of mine, and I know integrity is a big part of mine.
Yeah.
And I hate people not achieving their greatness as well. We talked about that.
Yeah, so the value is in realising potential.
Yeah, realising potential,
Yeah, because that's one of mine.
Yeah, I think that's a big one for me, and my own. I don't know if this is a core value, but I would like to make anyone around me achieve their things that they want to achieve.
Probably inspiring people is a value of yours.
And just making sure that they understand they can do them things. It doesn't matter where they come from and their background. It's more about the mindset. Yeah,
and I think that is true, because there are certainly times I deal with people who are phenomenal people, like in their industry, their particular profession, they are leaders, and I would struggle to get to be as good as they are, and yet they have some crippling self-confidence and self-doubt, which I just wish I could take that all away from them. But actually they have to go through the process of learning how to build their own confidence and self-worth, because actually wanting to take that away from them is not helping them empower themselves. It's trying to fix things, and that doesn't work. At least it doesn't work long term. Yeah.
Got me really thinking. I think I'm going to wind the podcast up. I think I've covered everything I wanted to get out. It was quite selfish in this podcast today a little bit.
That was great, though. It was a very open conversation. And I think in professional spaces, certainly when I was a trainee, we were taught to keep our professional life and our personal life separate.
No.
And I really struggled, because I'm the same Vicki. If you meet me in my vegetable garden, like covered in dirt, or if I meet me on a dog walk or at a black tie event, I might look different in the clothes I'm wearing, but I'm exactly the same person.
Yeah, that's something amazing.
And that's because I got comfortable with who I am. And it took a while. And it's still a journey. Like, I'm not finished. Like, there's so much more to go.
Yeah.
But I'm happier in my own skin than I have ever been before. So
what an amazing space to be in.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
I think if you watch this podcast and you know Vicki, I think you'd probably agree with me. It's an amazing opportunity to have someone in the UK industry just working in the franchise industry.
Yeah. It's a great industry to be in. I think we're so lucky. It's I said that one of my values was love, and it's love, warmth, compassion. But I find that this is a compassionate and collaborative industry, and I think that's why it resonates with me.
Yeah.
Like, law itself doesn't always seem like a very loving space, but there's a lot of. I think that's why I have so much joy in franchising and the role I play within it. And I might play other roles. I've been a franchisor and a franchise lawyer. Who knows?
Yeah.
What other opportunities there are?
I think this podcasting is just a very thought-provoking podcast. It makes you think about a lot of things.
And it gets you knowing people on a deeper level. And, years ago I used to have a work phone and a personal phone. Now it's one. Yeah. And like I don't care if it's a client or a friend that has my number. They've got my number. They can call me. There might be times when I set boundaries and I don't take calls. But, for the most part, it is one thing. And I think during lockdown, when there was a Facebook group started, the Franchise Mastermind group was first started, and I was sort of linked in from my personal Facebook account, which is the only one I have. And I was like, oh gosh, should I go and check all the photos of me like at uni and stuff, see if they're all there, because I didn't want that to be seen in my professional space. But actually I am who I am, whether I'm putting out pictures of, flowers I've grown from my mother, or my dog on a walk, or at a franchise exhibition when I'd meet people like you and going around and we have a photo together. That's all me. And
a lot of the time
if people don't like that, that's okay.
And that's
if people
a lot
do
of people,
like it, then great.
It's a lot of people's why, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people's why is their personal things that's going on in their life, and your mum, your dad, and your friendship group, your vegetable patches, and your dog, and
exactly. It's the whole thing. And I think actually, if you're happy with all of that, then that should be part of you,
so
professionally and personally.
Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you.
Cheers. Fucking hell.